It wasn't a ghost. Ghosts haunt places. They drift through hallways, they flicker lights and slam doors and disappear when you look too closely. A ghost is something you can almost explain away. What came into Jack and Janet Smurl's home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, was something else entirely. It had weight. It had intention. It could touch you, and it did. It scratched. It bit. It held you down in the dark and breathed into your face while you screamed. It didn't just haunt the house. It haunted them. It followed them on vacation. It followed them into the woods. And when a Catholic priest arrived to perform an exorcism, one of the most powerful religious rituals known to mankind, what was inside that house laughed at him. This is not a story about things that go bump in the night. This is the documented account of a Pennsylvania family who spent years being physically tortured by something they could not see, could not reason with, and, for a terrifyingly long time, could not stop. This is the Smurl haunting. The year is 1973. Richard Nixon is still president, the Vietnam War is grinding toward its end, and in a small working-class neighborhood in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, the Smurl family is doing what most American families do. They are trying to build something good. Jack Smurl is a quiet, hard-working man. His wife, Janet, is deeply religious, devoted to her Catholic faith and to her 4 daughters. They are not dramatic people. They are not people who believe in monsters. They buy a duplex on Chase Street. It is a practical decision. Jack's parents, John and Mary Smurl, will live in one half of the house. The 2 families will share walls, share meals, share a life. It is warm and it is ordinary, and it is exactly the kind of life the Smurls want. For the first 3 years, nothing happens. Then, in 1974, small things begin. A stain appears on the carpet, not from a spill, it simply appears, dark and spreading, and when they clean it, it comes back. A television set catches fire with no electrical explanation. Pipes begin to leak in patterns that make no sense. The plumber who comes to fix them cannot explain what he finds. There is a smell, low and rotten like something dead inside the walls, that drifts through rooms and then vanishes before anyone can locate its source. The Smurls tell themselves it is an old house. Old houses have problems, but old houses don't leave handprints on freshly painted walls. Old houses don't produce voices. In 1986, over a decade after moving in, Janet Smurl will sit down with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren and describe in precise detail the moment she knew something was genuinely wrong. She was standing in her kitchen. The temperature dropped so suddenly she could see her own breath, and then something that was not human, something she could not see, moved past her, and she felt it the way you feel a current of cold water moving through a warm lake. She stood there in her kitchen, in her family home, in broad daylight, and she understood for the first time that her family was not alone. That understanding would cost them everything. The things that happened inside 328th Street follow a pattern familiar to demonologists. A slow escalation, almost calculated, as if whatever was inside the house was testing the limits of what the family could endure before they broke. It started with sound. Footsteps. Not upstairs, not in another room, right beside you, walking beside you down the hallway, stopping when you stopped, starting again when you moved. The family would freeze in their tracks and listen, and the silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound. Then the walls began to speak. Not words, not at first, guttural, rhythmic sounds that the Smurls described as something between breathing and chanting, rising up through the plaster late at night. Jack would press his ear to the wall trying to locate it, and the sound would shift, moving away from his ear, retreating deeper into the house. Then came the apparitions. A woman in a black robe, not transparent, not translucent, solid, standing in the corner of the bedroom, standing at the foot of the bed, standing in the doorway. She never spoke. She never moved when they looked at her. She simply was there, and then she was not. The daughters, Shannon, Karen, and twins Heather and Dawn, began waking in the night, screaming. Not from nightmares. They would wake alert, sitting upright, eyes wide open, pointing at things the adults could not see. Heather, who would later become a nun, would say in interviews that from a very young age she knew that what was in their house had no interest in leaving. But it is what happened to Jack that removes all ambiguity about what the Smurls were dealing with. Jack Smurl is a man with no history of psychological illness, no documented instability. His co-workers and neighbors describe him consistently as grounded, practical, unemotional. He is not a man who sees things. He began waking in the night, paralyzed. Not groggy, not sluggish, completely immobile, lying on his back in bed, unable to move a single muscle, aware of a weight on his chest that pressed the air out of his lungs. And in those moments, something would be there. He could not always see it clearly. He described it later as a presence, immense, cold, and violently aware of him. On at least 2 occasions, he was physically thrown from his bed. Janet, sleeping beside him, would be woken by the sound of him hitting the floor. And here is the detail that investigators would return to again and again. The attacks on Jack and Janet were not random. They occurred at specific times. They intensified during certain weeks. They responded to the rhythms of the Catholic calendar, growing worse during holy days, during Lent, during Christmas. Whatever was in the house, it was not indifferent to religion. It was reacting to it. That is not the behavior of a place. That is the behavior of a thing. By 1986, 13 years into their life on Chase Street, the Smurls had told almost no one. This is important to understand. Jack and Janet Smurl were not people seeking attention. They were not looking for fame or book deals or television appearances. They went to their priest. Their priest prayed with them and told them the house had been blessed and encouraged them to pray more. They accepted this. They prayed more. The attacks did not stop. Janet began keeping a journal, date, time, nature of the incident, meticulous, careful, the handwriting of a woman who is trying to hold on to her sanity by recording evidence of the thing stealing it. The journal would eventually run to hundreds of entries. It was through their local diocese that the Smurls finally connected with Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators from Monroe, Connecticut, who had by then built a reputation investigating cases across the country, including the Amityville house. Ed Warren was a self-described demonologist. Lorraine Warren was a clairvoyant, a woman who claimed to perceive things in the spirit realm that ordinary people could not. They arrived at 328 Chase Street in January of 1986. Lorraine Warren would later say that she knew before she reached the front door. She described a heaviness in the air around the property, a pressure that she said was unlike anything she had encountered at other locations. She said it felt occupied, not haunted, occupied. There is a difference. Haunted implies something lingering, something left behind. Occupied implies something actively present, actively choosing to be there. The Warrens set up equipment. They interviewed each member of the family separately. They walked the house. They sat with Jack and Janet and listened to the journal read aloud. Hours of documented incidents, dates, times, physical descriptions. And then Lorraine Warren told them what she believed they were dealing with. Not a ghost, not residual energy, not a poltergeist, a demon. Specifically, she believed there were multiple entities in the house, possibly 4, with one dominant presence that she described as a lower-order demon attached to the family, not merely to the building, attached to the family. This is the distinction that would drive the rest of the case and the rest of the Smurls' suffering. If it were attached to the house, the solution would be simple: leave, move out, start over somewhere new. But you cannot leave something that is attached to you. The Warrens recommended an exorcism. They contacted the diocese. The diocese was hesitant. The church does not approve exorcisms easily. The process requires documentation, review, approval through multiple levels of ecclesiastical authority. The Warrens pressed. The diocese deliberated. While the church deliberated, the entity inside 328 Chase Street grew bolder. What happened during the winter and spring of 1986 inside the Smurl home is documented in Janet's journal, in the Warrens' case files, and in the testimony of multiple witnesses, including a neighbor who arrived unannounced one afternoon and witnessed something she refused to describe in detail for years afterward. The entity became physical. There is no other way to say it. Whatever rules had previously governed its behavior, whatever restraint it had previously shown, dissolved. It was no longer content to appear and disappear. It was no longer content to make sounds and leave stains and move objects. It began to touch them. Janet was scratched, not lightly, deep gouges, 3 parallel lines appearing on her arms and back in the night. She would wake to the burning and find marks she had not had when she went to sleep. Jack documented the marks, photographed them. The photographs exist. The twins, Heather and Dawn, were found one morning in their bedroom in a state their parents could not immediately explain. Both girls were physically unharmed, but both were hysterical, and neither could or would describe clearly what had happened in the night. Janet would say years later that what she found when she opened that door is something she has never fully shared publicly. The smell intensified, a sulfuric, choking odor that would fill rooms without warning and disappear just as abruptly, leaving no trace that any chemical or natural source could account for. The temperature fluctuations became violent. Rooms would drop 20-25 degrees in seconds. In one documented incident, a glass of water left on the kitchen table froze solid overnight while the rest of the house remained warm, and Jack Smurl was sexually assaulted. This is documented. This is in the case files. Ed Warren described it carefully in subsequent interviews, emphasizing that this form of attack, rare, documented across centuries of demonological literature, is considered by Catholic theology to be among the most extreme forms of demonic assault. The entity responsible is classified as a succubus. Jack Smurl reported the incident to the Warrens in visible distress. He was not a man who spoke easily about personal matters. He spoke about this. The family dog, a large German shepherd that had lived in the home for years, was found pressed against a corner of the living room, trembling, refusing to move, staring at something no human in the room could see. The dog had to be removed from the house. It never returned willingly. In March of 1986, a Catholic priest named Father Robert McKenna, a traditionalist outside the mainstream diocesan structure, agreed to perform a formal exorcism on the home. He arrived with holy water, relics, and the Rituale Romanum, the traditional Latin rite of exorcism. He performed the rite thoroughly and seriously. He was inside the house for hours. When it was over, Father McKenna said that he had felt something resist him, actively, intelligently resist in a way he had not experienced before. The attacks resumed the same night. The exorcism had failed. In the summer of 1986, desperate, exhausted, running out of options, the Smurls did what any rational family would do. They left. They packed their daughters and their dog and what they needed and drove to a campground in the Pocono Mountains, hours from West Pittston, hours from Chase Street, hours from the house that had been destroying them for over a decade. They set up camp. They breathed mountain air. For one day, possibly two, Janet Smurl would later say there was something approaching peace. And then, it found them. The first sign was sound, the same rhythmic sound from inside the walls of Chase Street, rising up now from the earth beneath their campsite. Jack woke in the tent to the sound of it and lay very still, listening, and understood what it meant. The second sign was a figure. Witnesses at the campground, other campers unconnected to the family, later reported seeing a dark figure moving through the trees at the edge of the Smurl campsite after dark. Not a person, not clearly enough shaped to be a person, something moving in the tree line that did not move the way a person moves. The attacks resumed at the campground. Janet was scratched. The children were wakened in the night. The smell came and went through the canvas walls of the tent as easily as it moved through plaster and drywall on Chase Street. They drove home because there was nowhere else to go. This moment, the failed camping trip, the entity pursuing them across Pennsylvania, is the moment that Janet Smurl, deeply religious, who had prayed every day of her adult life, who had never wavered in her faith, allowed herself to say plainly what she felt. She felt abandoned, not by the Warrens, not by the priests, by God. She was a Catholic woman who had done everything right, who had prayed more prayers and lit more candles and received more sacraments than most people manage in a lifetime, and something was still in her house, still hurting her family, still following her children into the mountains. She did not stop believing. But in later interviews, she described that summer as the period when her faith stopped feeling like a shield and started feeling like a question she was afraid to ask. That honesty, that raw, documented despair, is one of the details that investigators and theologians who have studied this case return to when assessing its credibility. It is not the testimony of someone performing victimhood. It is the testimony of someone who is broken. In August of 1986, the Smurls went public. They did not want to. Ed and Lorraine Warren urged caution. Going public with a demonic haunting in a small Pennsylvania town was not a decision with clean consequences. But the family needed more ecclesiastical support, and they believed that public pressure might force the diocese to act. They were right. They were also unprepared for what followed. The story ran first in the Scranton Tribune, then spread. By late August, national press was camped outside 328 Chase Street. Television crews, reporters, curiosity seekers, people who drove from neighboring states to park in front of the house and stare. The diocese, now under scrutiny, agreed to send their own investigator. A second exorcism was arranged, this time performed by a priest with full diocesan authorization, Father Richard Voy. He performed the rite of exorcism inside the house on a Thursday afternoon in September. Lorraine Warren was present. She would say afterward that during the rite, the temperature in the room became extreme, colder than anything she had documented before in years of investigations across the country. She said the air became thick. She said she heard sounds during the Latin prayers that were not made by any human throat present in the room. Father Voy completed the exorcism. He left the house believing he had accomplished something. By that evening, Janet Smurl was scratched again. The entity was still there. But something had shifted, not in the house, but in the attacks themselves. In the weeks following the second exorcism, the incidents began gradually to decrease in intensity, not to stop, but to lessen. Objects moved less violently, the physical attacks became less frequent, the temperature fluctuations became less extreme. The Warrens believed this was the result of the accumulated religious intervention wearing down whatever was in the house. Others believe the publicity itself changed the dynamic, that whatever feeds on isolation and secrecy and despair found itself in a house full of cameras and priests and investigators and had less room to operate. Whatever the reason, by early 1987, the Smurls were sleeping through the night more often than not. In 1988, Jack and Janet Smurl published their account in a book titled The Haunting. In 1991, their story was adapted into a television film. They gave interviews. They appeared on talk shows. They faced, as people who report experiences like theirs always face, a spectrum of response ranging from sympathy to mockery to genuine scientific inquiry. What they did not do is recant. Across decades, through changing public perception of the paranormal, through the natural erosion of memory and time, Jack and Janet Smurl held their account. They did not elaborate beyond what they had originally documented. They did not add details that made the story more dramatic. They said what happened, and they said it the same way every time. Heather Smurl entered a convent and became a nun. She did not flee from religion, she ran toward it. In the rare interviews she has given, she frames the events of her childhood not as a crisis of faith, but as a confirmation of it. She says that what she witnessed as a child showed her that the spiritual world is real in both directions. Janet Smurl has spoken about the lasting psychological effects, the hypervigilance, the difficulty sleeping, the years of nightmares. She does not discuss the specific events in detail. She says there are things she experienced in that house that she has never told publicly and does not intend to. Jack Smurl died on June 22, 2017, following a long battle with diabetes. He never changed his account. Janet Smurl continued to speak about the case in the years following Jack's death, maintaining the same measured, consistent recitation of what happened on Chase Street. She described the most horrifying years of her life with the clarity of someone who has accepted that she will never fully be believed and has decided that this does not relieve her of the obligation to tell the truth. Janet passed away on January 10, 2026. In 1987, the Smurls listed 328 Chase Street for sale. They did not taper off, did not slowly disengage. They made a decision, put the house on the market, and left. In 1988, they relocated permanently to Wilkes-Barre. No ceremony, no final confrontation, just a family loading a moving truck and driving away from 13 years of documented terror, leaving the house and whatever was in it behind. A man named Richard Bridle purchased the property as a rental shortly after. He could not keep tenants. The house's reputation had preceded it. People knew the name Smurl, knew what had been reported inside those walls, and no one wanted to stay. Eventually, a woman named Deborah Owens moved into the duplex and lived there without incident. She told a local newspaper that she experienced nothing unusual. Nothing moved. Nothing appeared. No one scratched her in the night. The house still stands in West Pittston. It has changed hands multiple times. None of the subsequent residents have reported what the Smurls reported. Whether the entity left with the family, which was always the Warrens' fear, or whether it dissipated after the exorcisms and the Smurls' departure, that question has no clean answer. What is known is that the family who lived through it walked away intact, damaged, changed, some of them permanently altered by what they witnessed as children, but intact. What the record does answer is this. Between 1974 and 1987, in a working-class duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a family experienced 13 years of documented, witnessed, physically evidenced supernatural assault. They sought help from their church, their neighbors, their community, and professional investigators. They endured 2 formal exorcisms. They fled their home and were followed. And in the end, what drove the entity away, if it is indeed gone, was not one dramatic confrontation. It was something more unsettling than that. It was time and endurance, and a family that refused, despite everything, to break completely. The Smurl haunting does not give you a clean ending. There is no confirmed identification of what was in that house. There is no scientific explanation that accounts for all the documented evidence. There is no moment where a door closes and you know with certainty that it is over. What there is a family, a real family with real names, real addresses, real photographs of real injuries. A family that kept records and told the same story for decades and asked for nothing except to be believed. Maybe you believe them, maybe you don't. But consider this, the Smurls did not move out of that house for years after the hauntings began, not because they couldn't, but because whatever was in there had already made the critical leap. It had stopped being a problem with the house. It was a problem with them, and you don't solve that by moving.